Hosted in conjunction with Chris Media, the CEO interview series allows investors to hear directly from the CEOs leading the companies featured on Wholesale Investor. Enjoy the interview and reach out via the details in the description.
Hi everyone, welcome to another CEO interview. Today joining us we have Dr. Antony Rapisarda, founder and CEO of OrthoDx. Thank you for joining us, Antony.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Meg.
So to start with, Antony, could you please explain to the audience what the company is and the function it performs?
Sure. So OrthoDx is a molecular diagnostics company, and our main goal at the moment with our first product is to be able to differentiate the causes of joint pain in all adults. So we are a company that has designed a test or an assay that is able to tell clearly at the patient's first presentation whether their joint pain is caused by an infective condition, which is an emergency, or an inflammatory condition, which is not an emergent problem that can be dealt with either out of the hospital or in GP rooms, clinics, and a non-urgent clinical setting.
Okay, fantastic. And what did you see in the market or the general population that motivated you to work on this company as a solution?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Throughout the course of my training, so training to be an orthopedic surgeon, the biggest issue that we sort of had to deal with on a day-to-day basis is, the constant phone calls and referrals from GPs, emergency physicians and other colleagues who would say, we've got a patient that's presented with joint pain. We don't know what it is. Can you come and assess them for us, I should say. Mm-hmm. And often that would be at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so this would be a get out of bed, drive to the hospital to see a patient. We wouldn't really be able to add any value clinically because one of the problems with this type of issue is that everything presents the same. So an infective patient and an inflammatory patient, red hot swollen joint, it's always the same presentation. There's no way to really delineate the two pathways. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to try and address that issue and give people some sort of information early on to be able to help drive them into one of two categories, which was, if it's an infective pathway, they need to be in a hospital, they need to be treated and seen by surgeons. Mm-hmm. If it's a non-infective pathway, as we said at the start, you could probably treat them in a non-urgent setting. So that was the main driver of that.
Brilliant, thank you. And could you give me and the audience a deeper understanding of the clear value add from the company's solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a pretty large paradigm shift. So typically what we've all grown up with clinically is to be able to look for, severity of illness and look for pathogen diagnosis through culture, microbiology, some molecular techniques and that sort of peripheral sort of circumstantial testing, if you want to call it that kind of all chips in together to give you a rough idea of what's going on. The problem with that is it's highly inaccurate and there is no real specific test that is aimed at that diagnosis or differentiation. So what we decided to do was completely decouple ourselves from that system. Mm-hmm. So we became a host response technology. Mm-hmm. So rather than wait for, a bug to grow in a laboratory after 3 days, 2 weeks, 4 weeks sometimes, we wanted to know what that patient's immune system was doing immediately. Okay. So we mapped that out using genomic technology and PCR, which everyone's familiar with now thanks to COVID. And so what we did was we basically found a way to tell the physicians and the surgeons what was happening in real time with that patient's immune system, because it's always right. And our ability to leverage that, we basically translated what the immune system was saying in real time to report that as a probability or a likelihood ratio. So away from severity, away from pathogen identification, more focused on the early diagnosis of whether it's an infective or a non-infective pathway. And from there, you don't need to tell the surgeons and the physicians what to do. They know what to do, but they need to know when to do it at the start.
Right, fantastic. And I guess following on from that, could you tell us about the competitive advantage that you have above other solutions that already exist in the market right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were saying, a lot of the solutions today are looking at pathogen identification, and 3 things have to happen for a bug to be grown, right? Okay. So when you try and aspirate or take the bug out of the joint, you have to, number one, find it and stick a needle into a space where it exists. Okay. You then have to take enough of it out so that you have the ability to grow it. And then the third problem is you have to make sure that whatever you put it on to grow, it likes to grow on. So if at any point in those 3 steps of the chain, any part of that gets broken down, you don't get a result. So that's a big issue. And there were some papers that were published recently in December 2020 looking at the true positive rate of culture identification using molecular techniques from a kind of competitive technology. It's not really the same as us, but the true positive rate was only about 17%. So they had this study of 1,544 patients, and then 1,276 of them never got a result. Right. So what do you do with them, right? So that's the problem. So with our technology, because it is a host response immune system based technology, it always delivers a result to you, and it always tells you what the body is doing. So as long as you have an intact immune system, the test will work. And what that does is it tells us that if at the early stages of our presentations where we know it's hard to grow things because maybe there aren't so many bugs in that particular space, maybe we put it on the wrong culture medium that didn't like to grow, we know that we can decouple from that completely, and we can rely on the body's immune system and say, right, it is mounting a response towards this particular pathway. It is 1 in a billion chance of it being wrong. So therefore, we know that whatever we're reporting back to you is what the immune system is doing, and it must be right. So that's the main competitive advantage. The other advantage is speed. Okay. We deliver a result in every single patient within 4.5 hours of the sample getting into the laboratory, whereas with some of these cultures, particularly with some of the harder to grow bugs, they can take up to 28 days. Wow. Most results will return within 24 to 72 hours. Yeah. But certainly not 4.5 hours. And the true positive rate for them is, as we said, maybe 1 in 5. So it's quite a huge step forward. Yeah,
fantastic. And okay, so behind this, you must have a fantastic team, including yourself.
Do. Thank you. Yep.
Could you talk a bit more about the team and the skills that they bring to the business?
Yeah, so we've identified 3 core areas of our business that we wanted to be really, really strong in to give us a huge competitive advantage. So all of these contribute to add to speed for us. So speed to market is one of our big advantages, but that's only made possible by the people we have in the team. So obviously I've done a lot of the scientific work and the research involved in creating that technology from a clinical perspective. We have our Chief Technology Officer who's very good at AI, natural language programming, to be able to help with the bioinformatics analysis and our bioinformatics partners that we work with. And then we have a strong financial component for the business where we have our CFO, our commercial advisory board that have got deep commercial experience. The chairman of our board has successfully exited the only successful orthopedic implant company in Australia. We have such a deep skill set beyond our core team, looking at the people we leverage. So we do all of our sequencing through the Garvan Institute, and they're world class. We do a lot of our manufacturing through Oz Diagnostics, who again, world class outfit that provide us with the machines that are able to produce this result in such short windows of time. And beyond that, we've got an amazing research team, and all of the colleagues and surgeons that we have who are either invested with us or collaborating and working with us. Yeah. They're all addressing this needs in their own clinical practice on a daily basis. So having that ability to leverage that knowledge and experience and then amplify it with the core team that we have, plus the periphery that we have working with us, it provides us with a huge competitive advantage, which is really good.
Fantastic. Must be a great team to work with.
They are. They're very enjoyable, yeah.
Fantastic. So could you tell the listeners any milestones that you've hit so far that they might want to hear about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just completed the first tranche of our Series A capital raise. We've got about 3.5 of the 7 million that we're looking to raise, and this will be the second part of that. We are just about to finish our validation trial of 400 patients. It's on the back of our 60-patient proof of concept trial. We're in the process of building all of our TGA documents for submission in February, which will be great because we'll have hopefully a regulatory cleared product or approved product by this time next year, which will allow us to access the Australian market and beyond. And, fortunately, we've just had a very successful trip overseas where we just won the Best Emerging Technology in Orthopaedics, which was awarded at the International Society of Technology and Arthroplasty, which is where all the bleeding edge research in orthopaedics comes. So we were very humbled by that accolade. That was a very big win for us. We did really well there.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic
it was really
news.
Good. Yeah.
And finally, for the listeners, what does the roadmap look like over the next 6 to 12 months for OrthoDx?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we are gearing up and structuring our efforts at the moment with the proceeds of this capital raise to set ourselves up for domestic revenue first.
Okay.
Beyond that, we're setting up to run a large randomized control trial. Now, we've been quite fortunate because of all the colleagues that I have, professionally in orthopedics. We have access to every state and territory in Australia. So what we're doing is we're designing a large randomized control trial to provide us with level 1 evidence, which will also provide a regulatory moat around the company as well as our strong IP mode. And what that will do is that will look at patient presentations across regional, rural and metropolitan centres domestically. We're partnering with our colleagues in the United States to set up for the FDA application, which will come in 2023, depending on how quickly we finish this trial. And the idea behind that is to build a revenue base in Australia and then take the RCT data that we've built with our Australian and American colleagues, submit that to the FDA to meet their demographic requirements, get an FDA approval to start expanding the technology into the US market in 2024, and then beyond that, target Europe and the rest of the G7 nations. So it's going to be a busy time.
Yeah, super busy, but all super exciting.
It is, yeah. It's gone really, really well for us. We're very happy.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for coming in.
Pleasure.
Listeners, if you are keen to speak more with Dr. Antony, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen now, and that will take you into his deal room. From there, you can look at any more documents that you might want to look into and also reach out to Anthony to have a chat with him. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.